Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in the grand chamber of the Galactic Cooperative Council, her hands clasped behind her back, as she watched the final vote tally appear on the massive holographic display. The numbers glowed red against the dark walls. 847 votes for expulsion, 23 against, 15 abstentions. After 100 years of membership, humanity was being cast out of the galaxy's most powerful governing body. The chamber buzzed with alien voices, speaking in dozens of languages. The Zephyrians clicked their mandibles in approval, while the crystalline Vorthan delegates chimed their satisfaction. Only a handful of species had voted against the motion, and Elena knew they had done so more out of politeness than genuine support. High Counselor Vextar of the Hegemony rose from his elevated platform, his forearms spreading wide in a gesture of finality. His voice echoed through the chamber's advanced acoustic system, automatically translating into every known language. "The motion has passed by an overwhelming majority," Vextar announced. "Effective immediately, the human species is expelled from the Galactic Cooperative Council. All trade agreements are suspended, all diplomatic privileges are revoked, all military cooperation treaties are terminated." Elena felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her expression neutral. She had expected this outcome for weeks, ever since the incident at the Corellan border dispute. Humanity had solved a 3-year conflict in just 2 days, but the Council hadn't appreciated their methods. "Too direct," they said. "Too aggressive. Too human." "The charges against humanity are clear," continued Counselor Thys, the snake-like Naga representative. Her forked tongue flicked out as she spoke. "Excessive use of force in diplomatic situations, refusal to follow established protocols, dangerous unpredictability that threatens the stability of our carefully maintained peace." Elena almost laughed at that. Peace? The galaxy had been burning while the Council held committee meetings and debate sessions. Pirates raided trade routes for months while diplomats argued about jurisdiction. Entire colonies had been wiped out by plague, while the Council formed study groups to examine the problem. Humanity had simply done what needed to be done. Furthermore, Thys continued, human representatives have repeatedly shown contempt for our democratic processes. They push for hasty decisions without proper consideration. They ignore the wisdom of species who have maintained galactic harmony for thousands of years. Representative Quindar of the Ethereal Collective floated forward, his translucent form shimmering with disapproval. Humans demonstrate a fundamental incompatibility with civilized governance. Their warlike nature and primitive emotional responses make them unsuitable for participation in advanced galactic society. Elena stepped forward, her boots clicking against the polished floor. The chamber fell silent as hundreds of alien eyes turned toward her. She had requested permission to address the Council one final time, though she suspected it would change nothing. "Honored counselors," she began, her voice steady and clear. "You speak of peace and stability, but what have you actually achieved? When the Xerian plague threatened to wipe out 12 systems, how long did your committees debate before taking action? 6 months. 6 months while billions died." Angry chittering and chiming filled the chamber. Several representatives rose in protest, but Elena continued. "When the Shadowkin pirates blockaded the Outer Rim trade routes, your diplomatic corps sent 17 separate delegations over 2 years. Meanwhile, entire worlds went without food and medicine. The problem wasn't solved until humans intervened directly." "That is exactly the problem," screeched Counselor Riftwing, her feathered crest bristling with indignation. "Humans act without authorization. You ignore proper channels. You treat diplomacy like warfare." "We treat problems like problems," Elena replied. "We find solutions instead of forming committees to study committees. We act while others debate. Perhaps that makes us unsuitable for this council, but it doesn't make us wrong." High Counselor Vextar raised one of his 4 hands for silence. "The human representative's words only confirm our decision. This attitude of superiority and disregard for established order cannot be tolerated in a civilized galaxy." Elena looked around the chamber one last time. These beings represented thousands of worlds and trillions of lives, yet they seemed more concerned with procedure than people. The ornate walls were covered with murals depicting great diplomatic victories, but Elena knew the real stories behind those victories. How many had died while the council debated? How many crises had been allowed to fester? Because taking action might set a dangerous precedent. "Very well," she said finally. Humanity accepts your decision. We will withdraw from Council space as requested. Our ships will depart within the standard 10-day period. Our colonies within Council territory will be evacuated. The chamber relaxed slightly. Many representatives had expected human threats or protests. Elena's calm acceptance seemed to surprise them. However, Elena continued, I want the record to show that humanity has never been the source of instability in this galaxy. We have been the solution to problems others were unwilling or unable to solve. Our methods may seem crude to your advanced civilizations, but they work. She paused, letting her words sink in. You call us warlike and primitive, but when the Void Seekers threatened to consume the inner worlds, who held the line at Proxima Station? When the synthetic rebellion on Kepler 442 turned genocidal, who negotiated the peace that saved both sides? When the neutron star at Vega began collapsing ahead of schedule, threatening 6 inhabited systems, who organized the evacuation? The chamber was completely silent now. Even the most vocal critics couldn't deny humanity's contributions to galactic security and stability. In every case, the Council's response was to form study groups and debate committees while people died. Humanity acted. We saved lives. We solved problems. And now you expel us because our methods make you uncomfortable. Elena straightened her uniform and looked directly at High Counselor Vexitar. Perhaps you're right. Perhaps we are too different to work within your system. But ask yourselves this. When the next crisis comes, and it will come, who will you call when your committees fail and your diplomatic protocols prove worthless? She turned and walked toward the chamber's exit, her footsteps echoing in the silence. At the threshold, she paused and looked back. Humanity doesn't need the Council to survive. We never have. We joined this organization because we believed in cooperation and mutual aid. We hoped to learn from older, wiser civilizations. Instead, we learned that age doesn't always bring wisdom, and that sometimes the newest voice in the room is the one worth hearing. The massive doors closed behind her with a soft hiss, sealing humanity's fate. Elena stood in the corridor outside the chamber, processing what had just happened. 100 years of partnership ended with a vote that had taken less than an hour to conduct. Her communication device chimed softly. A message from Earth. Evacuation protocols are ready. All human assets in Council space can be withdrawn within 8 days. Colonial Administration requests instructions. Elena typed back quickly. Proceed with full evacuation. Priority Alpha protocols. Leave nothing behind. As she walked toward the transport bay, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that the Council had just made a terrible mistake. They thought they were expelling a troublesome member who refused to follow the rules. In reality, they had just freed humanity from a system that valued process over results and procedures over people. The galaxy would learn soon enough whether that had been wise. Captain Sarah Chen watched the last human transport ship disappear into hyperspace from the bridge of the UES horizon. Earth's evacuation from Council space had been completed 3 days ahead of schedule, a feat of logistics that had impressed even their harshest critics. Every human colony, every research station, every trading post had been emptied and abandoned, but that was only what the Council could see. Status report, Sarah requested, turning to her navigation officer. All tagged vessels have cleared Council monitoring stations, Lieutenant Torres replied. Ghost protocol is in effect across all human ships. We're officially invisible to Council tracking systems. Sarah nodded. The Ghost protocol was humanity's most closely guarded secret, a combination of advanced stealth technology and quantum encryption that made human ships appear to simply vanish from sensors. The Council believed humans had retreated to lick their wounds in the Sol system. They had no idea that humanity was spreading across the galaxy like never before. On the main screen, a star map showed the true scope of human expansion. Red dots marked official human colonies that had been evacuated from Council space. Blue dots showed the hidden settlements that had been established over the past decade in systems the Council had never bothered to explore. There were 3 times as many blue dots as red ones. Engineering report, Sarah called out. Chief Engineer Martinez looked up from her console. All systems green, Captain. The new quantum drives are performing perfectly. We're getting twice the speed and half the energy signature of anything in the Council fleet. While the Council had spent decades perfecting their bureaucracy, humanity had been perfecting their technology. Cut off from Council research sharing agreements, human scientists had been forced to innovate on their own. The results had been spectacular. The communication console chimed with an incoming transmission. The face of Admiral Rebecca Walsh appeared on screen, broadcasting from the secret command center in the Kepler 186 system. "Sarah, what's your status?" Admiral Walsh asked without preamble. Military efficiency had become even more pronounced since the expulsion. "All evacuation ships have cleared Council space, Admiral. We're beginning Phase 2 operations." "Good. We've just received confirmation from the survey teams. The outer spiral has even more habitable worlds than we estimated. The Council never bothered to explore past the third spiral arm. They've been sitting on the most resource-rich region of the galaxy while complaining about scarcity." Sarah wasn't surprised. The Council's exploration doctrine was painfully conservative. They only investigated systems that met strict safety criteria, avoiding anything with unusual stellar activity or exotic matter concentrations. Humans had no such limitations. They went where others feared to tread and found wonders the Council couldn't imagine. "What about contact with the independent species?" Sarah asked. Admiral Walsh's expression brightened. "That's the best news of all. The Korath have agreed to a mutual defense pact. The Sylvani want to share their biotechnology in exchange for our quantum drives. The Nexari are practically begging us to help them establish trade routes outside Council space." This had been the most surprising discovery of all. The galaxy was full of intelligent species that had never joined the Council, or had been rejected for various reasons. Some were too aggressive for Council tastes. Others were too unpredictable or too different. A few had simply been ignored because they lived in regions the Council considered worthless. Humanity had found these outcasts and offered them something the Council never had: respect and partnership without conditions. "The Korath delegation arrives tomorrow," Admiral Walsh continued. "Their war leader wants to discuss joint military exercises. Apparently they're impressed by our direct approach to problem solving." Sarah smiled at that. The Korath were a warrior culture that the Council had kept at arm's length for centuries. Their application for membership had been rejected 17 times due to their excessive militaristic tendencies. Humanity saw potential allies who understood that. Sometimes force was the only language aggressors understood. "Orders, Admiral," Sarah asked. "Continue with the settlement program. Priority is establishing industrial capacity in the outer spiral. The Council thinks we're a minor species licking our wounds in one star system. Let's keep it that way while we build something they can't imagine." The transmission ended, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts. She walked to the observation deck and stared out at the swirling colors of hyperspace. Somewhere behind them, the Council was congratulating itself on removing a disruptive element from galactic politics. They had no idea what they had unleashed. Dr. Kim Nakamura, the ship's chief scientist, joined her at the viewport. "The latest reports from the research teams are fascinating," he said without preamble. "The Council has been missing incredible opportunities out here. We've found 17 new types of exotic matter, 3 previously unknown forms of energy, and at least 6 methods of faster-than-light travel that don't rely on hyperspace." "Any of them practical?" Sarah asked. "All of them, given enough development time. The Void Runners in the Magellanic Clouds have been using quantum tunneling for transportation for millennia. The Council dismissed them as technologically primitive because they don't use hyperspace drives." Sarah shook her head in amazement. The Council's arrogance had blinded them to the true diversity and potential of the galaxy. They saw themselves as the pinnacle of civilization and dismissed anyone who did things differently. The communication console chimed again. This time it was a priority message from Earth itself. Sarah recognized the encryption signature immediately. It was from the Colonial Administration's new Deep Space Division. "Captain Chen," the message began. "Phase 3. Preparations are ahead of schedule. Industrial fabricators are online in 47 systems. Resource extraction operations have begun in 31 asteroid belts and 3 gas giants. Military shipyard construction is proceeding in 12 locations." Sarah read the numbers twice to make sure she understood correctly. In less than 6 months since the expulsion, humanity had established more industrial capacity than some Council species possessed in their entire history. The message continued. "Independent species contact protocols have been approved by the Earth Assembly. You are authorized to extend full partnership offers to any species meeting the established criteria. Priority targets include the Void Runners, the Crystal Singers, the Hive Minds of Arcturus, and the Nomad fleets." Sarah felt a thrill of excitement. These were species the Council had either ignored or actively avoided. The Void Runners were considered too dangerous. The Crystal Singers were too alien. The hive minds were too unified for council comfort. And the nomad fleets refused to recognize territorial boundaries. To humanity, they represented untapped potential and unique perspectives that could benefit everyone. A new message arrived from the survey ship UES Pioneer. Incredible discovery in the Cygnus sector. Intact precursor ruins on 7 worlds. Technology appears to be millions of years ahead of current galactic standard, requesting immediate research team deployment. The precursors were a legendary ancient civilization that had vanished long before the Council was formed. Finding their ruins was every archaeologist's dream, but the Council's exploration policies made such discoveries nearly impossible. They were too cautious to venture into the dangerous regions where precursor sites were most likely to be found. Sarah made her decision quickly. Lieutenant Torres set course for the Cygnus sector, maximum speed, and send a message to Admiral Walsh. Inform her that we may have just found the key to rewriting the technological balance of the galaxy. As the ship changed course, Sarah reflected on humanity's new position. 6 months ago, they had been junior members of a galactic community that barely tolerated their presence. Now they were pioneers in uncharted space, making discoveries and alliances that would reshape the galaxy's future. The Council thought they had solved a problem by expelling humanity. Instead, they had freed the galaxy's most innovative species to pursue their own path. Soon, very soon, they would realize their mistake. 50 years had passed since humanity's expulsion from the Galactic Cooperative Council. High Counselor Zethrak of the Altarian Union stood before the emergency session, his crystalline form flickering with distress patterns that would have been beautiful under other circumstances. The plague has now spread to 47 council systems, he announced to the packed chamber. Traditional medical approaches have proven completely ineffective. The Ethereal Collective's bio-cleansing protocols failed. The Zephyrian genetic restructuring treatments made the symptoms worse. The Vorthon quantum healing chambers are useless against this pathogen. Fearful whispers filled the chamber. The Red Death, as it had come to be known, was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. It targeted nervous systems across multiple species, caused rapid organ failure, and seemed to adapt to every treatment attempted. Entire worlds had been quarantined, but the plague continued to spread. "What of the research stations?" asked Counselor Mix, her tentacles writhing with anxiety. "Surely our top scientists can develop a cure." "The research directorate has been working for 8 months, Zethrak replied grimly. "Their preliminary report suggests it may take decades to fully understand the pathogen, much less cure it." The chamber erupted in panic. Decades. With the plague's current spread rate, half the galaxy would be infected long before then. "There is another problem," announced Security Chief Vordan, his mechanical voice cutting through the noise. "Pirate activity has increased by 300% in affected systems. They target evacuation ships and medical supply convoys. Our patrol fleets are spread too thin to provide adequate protection." "How is that possible?" demanded Counselor Thys, her scales shifting to an angry red. "We have the largest fleet in galactic history. Large but slow to deploy," Vordan admitted reluctantly. "Our standard response protocols require approval from at least 3 subcommittees before military assets can be repositioned. By the time authorization comes through, the pirates have already struck and vanished." This was the reality the Council faced. Their massive bureaucracy, designed to prevent hasty decisions and maintain careful balance between member species, had become a liability in crisis situations. While they debated and formed committees, people died and problems grew worse. "Perhaps," suggested Counselor Riftwing hesitantly, "we should consider reaching out to species outside the Council. Some of the independent worlds might have different approaches to these problems." The suggestion was met with uncomfortable silence. The Council had always prided itself on being the pinnacle of galactic civilization. Asking for help from lesser species would be admitting failure. That's when the first reports started coming in. "Urgent transmission from the Kephalos system," announced the communications officer. "Medical supplies have arrived via unknown ships. The plague outbreak there has been completely stopped." Zethrak's form flashed with confusion. "Unknown ships? What do you mean unknown?" "The vessels appeared without warning. delivered advanced medical equipment and treatment protocols, then departed before our local representatives could make contact. The ships bore no identification markers and didn't respond to hail attempts. "That's impossible," protested Counselor Quindar, his ethereal form shimmering with disbelief. "No species in this galaxy has medical technology advanced enough to cure the Red Death so quickly." More reports began flooding in from across Council space. Mysterious ships were appearing at plague outbreak sites, delivering cures and disappearing just as suddenly. The vessels used no known propulsion systems and seemed to phase in and out of normal space at will. "Security Chief Vordan," Zethrak called out, "what can you tell us about these ghost ships?" "Very little," Vordan admitted. "Our sensors barely detect them. They seem to use some form of advanced stealth technology we've never encountered. Their energy signatures don't match any known species in our databases." "Could they be precursor technology?" suggested someone from the back of the chamber. "Ancient automated systems finally activating?" "Negative," Vordan replied. "These ships are clearly piloted by living beings. Intelligence reports indicate they respond to changing situations with tactical flexibility that no automated system could match." As the weeks passed, the mysterious interventions continued. Not only were the ghost ships curing plague outbreaks, they were also dealing with the pirate problem. Raider fleets that had terrorized Council space for months suddenly began disappearing. Survivors reported being attacked by ships that appeared from nowhere, struck with precision, and vanished without a trace. The most disturbing aspect was how effective these interventions were. Problems that had taken the Council months to address were being solved in days or even hours. It was as if someone was deliberately showing the galaxy how inadequate the Council's responses had become. "I demand answers!" High Counselor Vexitar shouted during one particularly heated session. "Who are these beings? What do they want? Why are they interfering in Council space?" The answer came sooner than expected, though not in the way anyone anticipated. A small diplomatic vessel dropped out of hyperspace just outside the Council's headquarters system. It was clearly alien in design, but used technologies that seemed decades ahead of anything in the Council fleet. When challenged by patrol ships, it simply transmitted a message. "Korath delegation requests permission to address the Galactic Cooperative Council on matters of mutual interest." The Korath, the warrior species the Council had rejected for membership 17 times over the past century. They were requesting an audience, and their ship was using technology that made Council vessels look like primitive toys. "How is this possible?" Zethrak wondered aloud as the Korath ship was escorted to the station. Intelligence reports indicated the Korath civilization was centuries behind Council standards. The Korath delegation was led by war leader Goktor, a massive being whose battle scars told the story of a violent life. He stood before the Council, with the confidence of someone who knew he held all the advantages. "Honored counselors," he began, his translator rendering his growling voice into something resembling diplomatic language. "The Korath people bring greetings and an offer of assistance during your current difficulties." "Your current difficulties?" Counselor Thys repeated, her voice dripping with indignation. "The galaxy faces unprecedented crises. This hardly seems the time for diplomatic games." Goktor's laugh was like the rumble of distant thunder. "Diplomatic games? We have been solving your problems while you held committee meetings. Who do you think has been curing your plague outbreaks and eliminating your pirate problems?" The chamber fell silent. The implications were staggering. "That's impossible," protested Counselor Quindar. "The Korath lacked the technology for such operations." "The Korath of 50 years ago, yes," Goktor agreed. "But we have had excellent teachers. Our allies have shared technologies and methods that make Council science look primitive." "Allies?" Zethrak's form flickered rapidly. "What allies?" Goktor's predatory smile revealed rows of sharp teeth. "The same allies who built the ships you call ghost vessels. The same allies who developed the medical technology that cures your incurable plague. The same allies who trained us to eliminate pirates with the efficiency you could never achieve." The chamber began to buzz with speculation and fear. Who could have advanced so far beyond Council technology in just 50 years? "You speak in riddles," complained Counselor Riftwing. Who are these mysterious allies? Gaktor's expression became serious. You know them well, counselors. You expelled them from this chamber 50 years ago for being too direct, too aggressive, too willing to act when action was needed. The revelation hit the chamber like a physical blow. Several counselors actually staggered in shock. Humans, Zethrak whispered, his crystalline form going completely dark. Humans, Gaktor confirmed. The species you cast out for refusing to follow your failed protocols. The people you called primitive and warlike. They have spent 50 years building something you could never imagine. A civilization that actually solves problems instead of talking about them. The Council investigation fleet emerged from hyperspace at the coordinates provided by the Korath delegation, expecting to find a small human outpost or hidden research station. Instead, they discovered something that challenged everything they thought they knew about the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Kexara of the Altarian Union stood on the bridge of the CNV Harmony, her crystalline form refracting the light from dozens of tactical displays. What she saw before her defied explanation. Spread across 7 star systems was a massive civilization that made Council space look primitive by comparison. Orbital cities hung around gas giants like jeweled necklaces. Asteroid belts had been transformed into sprawling industrial complexes. Planets that should have been barren rocks teemed with life under vast atmospheric domes. How many ships are we detecting? She asked her sensor officer. Over 10,000 vessels, Admiral, and those are just the ones we can see. Our sensors are picking up energy signatures that suggest many more ships are present but cloaked. 10,000 ships. The entire Council fleet numbered barely 3,000, and most of those were aging patrol vessels designed for peacekeeping rather than warfare. What about the technology readings? Kexara asked her science officer. The young Zephyrian's mandibles clicked nervously as he consulted his instruments. Admiral, their power output readings are off the scale. Some of these facilities are generating more energy than entire Council worlds. Their ships are using propulsion systems we don't even have theories about. A transmission came through from the lead human vessel, a sleek ship that seemed to bend light around itself. The face that appeared on screen was familiar to older Council members. Admiral Rebecca Walsh, now showing the gray hair and lines of age, but with eyes that held the same determination that had made humans so troublesome 50 years ago. Admiral Kexara, Rebecca said with a slight smile. Welcome to New Geneva Station. I apologize for the overwhelming nature of your first visit, but we wanted the Council to understand what humanity has accomplished since our expulsion. Kexara struggled to maintain her diplomatic composure. Admiral Walsh, the Council was unaware of the scope of human expansion. Our intelligence suggested your species had retreated to the Sol system. Your intelligence was exactly what we wanted it to be, Rebecca replied. The Ghost Protocol has kept our true activities hidden for decades, but recent events have made continued secrecy impractical. Through the viewports of the Harmony, Kexara could see ships from dozens of species she didn't recognize. Some were clearly alien designs, while others appeared to be hybrid technologies combining multiple approaches to engineering and physics. Who are your allies? Kexara asked. We don't recognize many of these ship designs. Species your Council either ignored or rejected over the centuries, Rebecca explained. The Void Runners from the Magellanic Clouds, the Crystal Singers from the Galactic Core, the nomad fleets that roam the Outer Rim, the hive minds of Arcturus, even the machine intelligences from beyond the galactic edge. Each name sent a chill through the Council delegation. These were species the Council had dismissed as too alien, too dangerous, or too different to work with. Yet here they were, clearly thriving as part of humanity's alliance. How is this possible? Kexara's science officer whispered, staring at the readings from a nearby orbital facility. That structure is larger than most Council planets, and it's generating power levels that should be theoretically impossible. Rebecca overheard the comment. Precursor technology, she explained casually. We found and restored 17 major precursor sites over the past 50 years. Turns out they left quite a few instruction manuals behind, once you learn how to read them. The revelation was staggering. Precursor ruins were considered the holy grail of galactic archaeology. The Council had managed to locate only 3 sites in 1,000 years of exploration, and none had yielded working technology. The precursors' technology was supposedly beyond current understanding, Kexara protested. Beyond current Council understanding, Rebecca corrected. The precursors built things to last millions of years and designed them to be repairable by anyone with sufficient motivation. The Council's exploration doctrine was too conservative to reach the sites where their best work was preserved. A new ship approached the Council vessel, and Kexara gasped when she recognized its design. It was clearly based on precursor architecture, but it had been modified and improved with technologies from multiple species. The hybrid vessel was both beautiful and terrifying, representing a level of cooperation the Council had never achieved. Your investigation request mentioned concerns about our recent interventions in Council space, Rebecca continued. Would you like to see our crisis response capabilities in action? Before Kexara could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the human fleet. A massive holographic display appeared in space between the ships, showing a star map with a red warning indicator. Pirate fleet attacking the Meridian colony, announced a human communications officer. Estimated force strength, 47 vessels. Colony defense grid is overwhelmed. Kexara checked her own star charts. Meridian colony was 3 days away at maximum hyperspace speed for Council ships. Any response fleet would arrive long after the pirates had finished their raid and disappeared. Response time? Rebecca asked calmly. 18 minutes to arrival, Admiral. Strike force is already deploying. Kexara watched in amazement as a dozen human ships simply vanished from her sensors, using some form of instantaneous travel that made hyperspace look slow. The holographic display showed them reappearing in the Meridian system within seconds. The pirate fleet never had a chance. The human ships didn't engage in the prolonged battles that characterized Council naval doctrine. Instead, they struck with surgical precision, disabling pirate vessels with weapons that seemed to ignore traditional shields and armor. Within minutes, the entire raider fleet was either destroyed or captured. Medical teams are deploying to the colony, the communications officer reported. Casualties are minimal thanks to the quick response. Infrastructure damage is being repaired by engineering drones. Total operation time? Rebecca asked. 17 minutes, 43 seconds, Admiral. Kexara felt her worldview crumbling. The Council would have taken weeks to organize a response to such an attack, and even then, they would have been too late to save the colony. These humans had solved the problem in less than 18 minutes. How? She whispered. Rebecca's expression became serious. By abandoning the Council's failed approach to governance and building something better. We don't hold committee meetings while people die. We don't debate jurisdiction while pirates raid colonies. We don't form study groups while plagues spread. We identify problems and solve them. The science officer on the Council ship was frantically taking readings from the human vessels. Admiral, he whispered to Kexara, their smallest patrol ships have more firepower than our heaviest battle cruisers. Their medical technology can cure diseases we can't even diagnose. Their industrial capacity exceeds the entire Council's combined output. But how did you advance so quickly? Kexara asked. 50 years isn't enough time to develop such capabilities. 50 years is plenty of time when you're not wasting energy on bureaucracy, Rebecca replied. We formed partnerships instead of holding membership committees. We shared technology freely instead of hoarding it for political advantage. We explored dangerous regions instead of playing it safe. Most importantly, we learned from species the Council considered unworthy. She gestured toward the mixed fleet surrounding them. The Void Runners taught us about quantum tunneling. The Crystal Singers showed us how to manipulate energy at the subatomic level. The Nomad fleets shared their expertise in resource optimization. The hive minds contributed their collective problem-solving abilities. Every species brought something valuable to our alliance. Kexara realized the full implications of what she was seeing. Humanity hadn't just survived their expulsion from the Council. They had used their freedom to build something far superior to what the Council had achieved in centuries of existence. What happens now? She asked quietly. Rebecca's smile returned, but there was no warmth in it. Now, Admiral, you return to the Council and deliver our message. The old way of doing things has failed. It's time for the galaxy to embrace a better approach. The emergency session of the Galactic Cooperative Council was the most chaotic in recorded history. Representatives from hundreds of species argued, shouted, and demanded answers as Admiral Kexara finished her report on humanity's transformation. The holographic evidence she had brought back painted a picture that shattered every assumption the Council had held about their place in the galaxy. High Counselor, Zethrak stood at the center of the chamber, his crystalline form flickering with stress patterns that indicated he was barely maintaining composure. Around him, the greatest minds of Council civilization struggled to process what they had learned. "This cannot be accurate," insisted Councillor Thiss, her scales shifting through angry reds and fearful purples. "No species can advance that quickly. It violates everything we know about technological development." "The evidence is undeniable," Kexara replied firmly. "I've seen their cities, their fleets, their industrial capacity. Humanity has not only matched our civilization, they have surpassed it by centuries." "But how?" demanded Councillor Quindar, his ethereal form pulsing with confusion. "They were barely more advanced than primitive societies when we expelled them." "That was exactly their advantage," came a new voice from the chamber entrance. All heads turned to see Elena Vasquez walking down the main aisle, her hair now silver with age but her bearing still proud and confident. Behind her walked representatives from a dozen species the council barely recognized. "Elena Vasquez," Zethrak said, his voice mixing surprise with old resentments. "The former human ambassador. How did you get past our security?" Elena smiled. "The same way our ships have been operating in your space for months. Your security is designed to stop council-level technology. We're several generations beyond that now." She reached the center of the chamber and looked around at the assembled representatives. Many of the faces were familiar from 50 years ago, though age had marked most of them. Others were new, representing species that had joined the council during humanity's absence. "Councilors," she began, "humanity returns to this chamber not as petitioners seeking readmission, but as representatives of a new galactic order. We come with an offer that will determine the future of every species in this galaxy." "You were expelled," shouted Councillor Riftwing, her feathered crest bristling. "You have no right to address this body." "Rights are earned, not granted," Elena replied calmly. "And we have earned our place through achievement rather than politics. While you spent 50 years holding meetings, we built a civilization that actually works." She activated a portable holographic projector, filling the chamber with a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Blue regions showed the Human Alliance's territory, which covered nearly a third of known space. Red areas marked council space, which looked small and isolated by comparison. "This is the current state of galactic civilization," Elena announced. "The blue regions represent the Free Alliance, over 400 species working together based on merit, mutual benefit, and effective problem-solving. The red areas show what remains of council space, a shrinking territory where bureaucracy has replaced progress." Angry protests erupted throughout the chamber, but Elena continued without pause. "In the past year alone, Alliance medical teams have eliminated 17 different plagues that Council science declared incurable. Our security forces have reduced piracy by 93% in protected systems. Our exploration fleets have discovered 47 new habitable worlds and 6 major precursor sites." "What about our member species who don't wish to abandon the Council?" asked Councillor Mix, her tentacles writhing with nervous energy. "They are welcome to remain," Elena replied. "But they should understand what that choice means. Council space is becoming increasingly isolated as more species choose Alliance membership over Council bureaucracy." She touched a control, and the holographic display showed recent membership changes. Over the past 5 years, 23 species had quietly withdrawn from the Council to join the Human Alliance. Several major Council worlds had opened unofficial diplomatic channels with Alliance representatives. "The Altarian Union is considering a formal alliance treaty," Elena continued, noting how Zethrak's form flickered with surprise. "The Ethereal Collective has already begun sharing research data with our science institutes. Even the Zephyrian hegemony has started adopting Alliance crisis response protocols." High Councillor Vexitar rose from his platform, his forearms spread in a gesture that demanded attention. "These claims are meaningless without proof. Show us this superior civilization you claim to have built." Elena nodded to one of her companions, a being the Council delegates didn't recognize. Its crystalline structure resembled the Vorthon's, but it pulsed with energies that seemed to bend space around it. "This is Ambassador Kyrex Thul of the Crystal Singers," Elena explained. "His people have been part of the Alliance for 30 years. Perhaps he can explain what we offer." The Crystal Singer's voice resonated through harmonic frequencies that touched something deep in every delegate's consciousness. When translated, his words carried the weight of absolute truth. The council rejected my people because our communication methods were deemed incompatible with standard diplomatic protocols, he began. We have spent 40,000 years perfecting techniques for sharing knowledge directly between species. The Alliance welcomed this gift and helped us refine it further. He gestured, and suddenly every delegate in the chamber could feel the presence of other minds, not invasive or controlling, but offering connection and understanding that transcended language barriers. Through this link, you can experience what we have built, Kyrex Thule continued, not through reports or data, but through direct understanding. The sensation was overwhelming. Delegates across the chamber gasped as they experienced the reality of Alliance civilization. They felt the satisfaction of problems solved efficiently, rather than debated endlessly. They experienced the joy of species sharing their unique gifts instead of competing for political advantage. They understood the peace that came from knowing that crises would be met with action, rather than committee meetings. Many of the delegates began to weep as they realized how much time had been wasted on the Council's inefficient systems. "This is impossible," Councillor Theiss whispered, but her scales had shifted to colors of wonder rather than anger. "It is inevitable," Elena corrected. "Civilization advances when barriers are removed, not when they are reinforced. The Council's greatest weakness has always been its belief that diversity should be controlled rather than celebrated." She looked around the chamber one final time. "We offer every Council species the opportunity to join a better system. One where your unique abilities will be valued rather than standardized. Where your contributions will drive progress rather than being lost in bureaucratic processes. Where your people will have a voice in solutions rather than just debates." Zethrak's form had gone completely clear, a sign of deep contemplation among his people. What would happen to the Council structure? Our institutions? Our traditions? "Those that serve useful purposes will be preserved and improved," Elena replied. "Those that exist only to maintain the status quo will be retired. Change is never comfortable, but it is necessary for growth." The chamber fell silent as delegates considered the implications. For 1,000 years, the Council had represented the pinnacle of galactic civilization. Now they were being offered the chance to become part of something even greater, but it would mean abandoning everything they had built. "You're asking us to dissolve the oldest governmental institution in galactic history," said Councillor Quindar quietly. "We're asking you to evolve it," Elena corrected. "The Council served its purpose for its time, but that time has passed. The galaxy has grown beyond what your system can handle effectively." Over the following hours, delegates began to leave the chamber to consult with their home governments. Some departed in anger, unwilling to consider abandoning their traditional ways. Others left in excitement, eager to explore the possibilities the Alliance offered. By the end of the day, formal applications for Alliance membership had been received from 37 Council species. Others requested observer status to learn more about the Alliance system. Only a handful insisted on maintaining the traditional Council structure. 6 months later, the last session of the Galactic Cooperative Council was held in what had once been their grand chamber. The ornate halls had been converted into a museum, preserving the history of the galaxy's first attempt at unified governance. The new Alliance Assembly met in a more practical facility, designed for efficiency rather than ceremony. Elena stood in the old chamber one final time, remembering her last appearance there 50 years ago. Then she had been expelled from a system that valued process over results. Now that same system had voluntarily dissolved itself to become part of something better. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the freedom to prove you wrong. Humanity had used that freedom to build a civilization that the Council could never have imagined. In doing so, they had rewritten not just the galaxy's rules, but its entire understanding of what was possible when diverse species worked together toward common goals.